The knock on my door felt heavier because it came from my own daughter after 13 years. Still, I opened it, carrying her children on my hip, the ones she left behind without a word. As she stepped in, calling me a kidnapper, her voice echoed in the home I built for her kids. While she stared at their photos on my wall, I remembered the night she walked out and I stayed. The same daughter I once protected now stood accusing me of saving her children. That's when I realized she gave birth to them. But I became their mother. Alright, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. Evelyn's heart skipped a beat when she heard the knock on her front door. At first, it was faint, almost like a passing breeze. But then it came again. This time sharp, insistent. She wasn't expecting anyone. Not today. Not in the way the knock sounded. She opened the door slowly, her hand gripping the knob with a strange, unfamiliar tension. Standing there, under the soft glow of the afternoon sun, was Rachel. It felt like a ghost had returned to haunt her. Rachel older, but the same sharp, calculating look in her eyes. The woman Evelyn had once called her daughter, now a stranger. "I know it's been a while," Rachel began, her voice smooth, rehearsed as though she had said these words 100 times. "But I'm here to reconnect with my kids." The words hit Evelyn like a blow to the chest. "Your kids?" Rachel nodded, looking past Evelyn into the house, her eyes darting toward the familiar warmth that had once been her home, but which now felt foreign with Rachel standing in the doorway. "Can I see them?" Rachel asked, her voice barely above a whisper, but sharp with a sense of entitlement. Evelyn stood frozen for a moment, the weight of the years pressing down on her chest. 3 years of raising Rachel's children, of filling a role that wasn't hers to fill. 13 years of missing out on her own life to ensure those kids never felt abandoned to be their mother when Rachel was nothing but a ghost. Aiden, Maya, and Liam had all grown up without her. Their memories of their biological mother, hazy, faded. They had their moments of longing, moments of wondering why Rachel had disappeared. But Evelyn had always been there, always. "They're not here," Evelyn said, her voice steadier than she felt. "They're at school." But she could see Rachel's eyes narrowing, the impatience creeping in. "I'll wait," Rachel said, stepping inside without an invitation, her presence swallowing the space. It was as if she had always belonged there. Evelyn tried to steady her breath. She couldn't let this happen. Rachel had no right to just waltz back into their lives after disappearing without a word. "I'm sure they'll be happy to see you," Evelyn said, her voice tight. But the words felt wrong as soon as she said them. The truth was, Evelyn didn't know how the kids would react to this sudden intrusion. Aiden, Maya, and Liam had their own feelings about their mother, and they wouldn't be fooled by any of Rachel's practiced apologies or excuses. Aiden was the first to return home. He stepped through the door, his face lighting up with surprise when he saw Rachel standing there like a shadow from his past come to life. "What are you doing here?" Aiden's voice was flat, his expression unreadable. Rachel's smile faltered. "Came to see you, all of you." Maya walked in next, her face going from curiosity to coldness in an instant as she spotted Rachel. "Why now?" Maya asked, her voice laced with suspicion. "Why after all this time?" Liam followed, his innocent face softening in confusion. "Mom?" he asked hesitantly, not sure if he was dreaming. Rachel took a step forward, her arms outstretched as if to embrace the children she had abandoned, but her gesture fell short. Aiden, Maya, and Liam remained rigid, standing their ground like a wall between the past and the present. Evelyn could see Rachel's frustration growing. The warmth she had hoped for, the reunion she had fantasized about, wasn't coming. It was slipping away like water through her fingers. "I'm your mother," Rachel said, her voice shaking now with something close to desperation. "I'm here to make things right." Aiden crossed his arms over his chest. "You can't just come back and pretend nothing happened." Rachel's jaw tightened, her face hardening into something unfamiliar, something angry. "You don't know what I've been through." But the kids weren't listening. Their silence was deafening. Evelyn could see the storm building inside Rachel. The veneer of calm was cracking, and Evelyn knew it wouldn't be long before things broke. The tension in the room thickened as Rachel's presence loomed over them like a storm cloud. The kids stood silent, their eyes locked on their mother, each one processing the weight of her return in their own way. But just when Evelyn thought the confrontation couldn't get any worse, Rachel's voice cut through the silence like a jagged knife. "You've kidnapped them, Evelyn," Rachel said, her words sharp and deliberate as if rehearsed 1,000 times. Evelyn's blood ran cold. The room spun for a moment, the edges of her vision blurring as she struggled to process what Rachel had just said. "Kidnapped," Evelyn repeated, the word tasting bitter in her mouth. "What are you talking about?" Rachel's eyes flashed with a fiery intensity, an emotion that was far from remorse. "You've kept my kids from me for years, and now you think you can just play the role of their mother. No, Evelyn, you don't get to keep them. They're mine." Evelyn felt her knees weaken, the ground beneath her feet suddenly unsteady. The thought of Rachel, the woman who had walked out of their lives without a trace, now accusing her of stealing what was hers, what had been hers to raise and protect, was incomprehensible. "I raised them. I gave them everything," Evelyn said, her voice trembling with a mix of hurt and disbelief. "I was there when you weren't. I made them feel safe, loved." Rachel's face twisted into a scowl. "It doesn't matter. You're not their mother. You never were, and I'm taking them back. You'll see. I have every right to them." Evelyn took a shaky step forward, feeling the weight of years of sacrifice and dedication pressing heavily on her chest. "You left them, Rachel. You walked out when they needed you most. Don't you dare come here now and act like you're the victim." Rachel's gaze hardened, her jaw tightening. "I don't care what you say. I'll take this to court if I have to. You can't keep them forever. The law will see it my way." The room went eerily quiet. The air seemed to vibrate with the tension between them, and Evelyn felt her heart beat faster like a drum in her chest, drowning out all rational thought. Aidan, standing behind his grandmother, narrowed his eyes. "You're not taking us anywhere," he muttered under his breath, his voice low but full of conviction. "We don't want you here." Rachel ignored him, her gaze fixed squarely on Evelyn. "I'm their mother and I'm entitled to them. You're just an imposter in my place." Evelyn's throat tightened, the words failing to come. She couldn't breathe. The accusation hung in the air, suffocating her as if the walls were closing in on her. All her life she had been the one who gave, the one who stayed, the one who held the broken pieces together. And now Rachel, her own flesh and blood, was saying she had no right to the children Evelyn had poured every ounce of her love into. "I won't let you take them," Evelyn said, her voice barely above a whisper, but firm, resolute. "I won't." Rachel's lips curled into a cold, calculating smile. "We'll see, won't we? I'll make sure of it." With that, she turned on her heel, her footsteps echoing through the house as she made her way toward the door. Evelyn watched her go, her mind spinning, unable to grasp the enormity of what was happening. As the door slammed shut behind Rachel, the silence felt deafening. It wasn't just the quiet of an empty house. It was the quiet of a world tipping dangerously off its axis. The kids' faces were a mix of confusion and anger, but Evelyn couldn't bring herself to say anything. Not yet. Her heart felt heavy with the weight of the battle ahead. Rachel wasn't just coming for her grandchildren. She was coming for everything Evelyn had worked so hard to build. Everything that had once been a safe, quiet sanctuary. And the storm was just beginning. The echoes of Rachel's departure haunted Evelyn as she sat alone in the dim light of the living room, her hands trembling around a cup of tea. She hadn't sipped. The house was quiet, far too quiet. Aidan, Maya, and Liam had retreated to their rooms, still processing the shock of Rachel's sudden appearance. But Evelyn couldn't escape the past. How could she when it was written so clearly on every corner of their home? She closed her eyes and it all came rushing back. The memories that had been buried, swept away beneath the layers of time. It had been a cold evening when Rachel first walked out. Evelyn had been sitting at the kitchen table poring over bills when she heard the front door slam open. Rachel, barely 27 at the time, stood in the doorway, a suitcase at her side, her eyes empty and distant. "I'm leaving, Evelyn," Rachel had said. The words flat, as though she'd made up her mind long before she ever said them. Evelyn had stood up, her heart sinking as she tried to comprehend what was happening. "Leaving? You're leaving your children?" Rachel's face had hardened, a flicker of defiance crossing her features. "I can't do this anymore. I need to find myself." The words were like knives, each one driving deeper than the last. But there was nothing Evelyn could say to stop her. Rachel was already gone, her resolve set like stone. And then there had been the silence, the terrifying, suffocating silence that followed. 3 children, Aiden, Maya, and Liam, left behind with only their grandmother to pick up the pieces. Evelyn never questioned it, never even thought about walking away. They were hers now, her responsibility, her heart's charge. She remembered the sleepless nights, the soft sobs of her grandchildren echoing through the house. Aiden, just 4 at the time, clinging to her, asking why Mommy didn't want him anymore. Maya, only a few years older, asking, "Is Mommy coming back?" Liam, the youngest, too young to understand, just sensing the absence. His small face creased in confusion. Evelyn would hold them close, her arms wrapping around them like a shield. She would whisper soothing words even when she had none to offer, knowing that the real answer, the truth of Rachel's abandonment, would never make sense to their young hearts. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'll never leave you," Evelyn had told them, her voice cracking as she wiped away her own tears. She didn't tell them that. In a way, she was grieving too. That part of her had been lost with Rachel's departure, a hole that would never be fully filled. But she stayed. She had to stay. Years passed. Evelyn sacrificed everything to ensure that Aiden, Maya, and Liam grew up with love and stability. Even when it meant she lost parts of herself, she became both mother and father. And when they needed something, whether it was a school project or a broken heart, Evelyn was the one they turned to. She was their safe place. But even now, after all these years, Evelyn couldn't shake the question that had never fully gone away. Did Rachel ever understand? Did she ever wonder what it had cost Evelyn to give those children everything she had, to raise them like her own? The weight of it all pressed down on Evelyn as she stood from the couch, her legs stiff from sitting too long. She wasn't the same woman she'd been when Rachel had left. She had fought for her grandchildren, fought through loneliness, exhaustion, and pain to give them a life that felt whole. And now, as the threat of losing them loomed larger with every passing moment, Evelyn knew she wasn't ready to let go. She would never let Rachel take them back, not without a fight. But she also knew this battle would be unlike any she had ever faced before. And the thought of what was to come made her stomach twist with fear. She walked to the window, looking out into the quiet neighborhood, her gaze drifting to the empty swings set in the yard. The children had always played there, laughing and shouting in joy. Would they ever find that peace again? Evelyn wiped her eyes, took a deep breath, and turned back toward the room. Whatever Rachel was planning, she was about to face the fight of her life. And Evelyn would stand ready. The storm was coming. The office smelled of fresh coffee and leather, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside Evelyn. She sat across from Rachel Adams, a seasoned family lawyer with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. The walls of the office, lined with bookshelves and legal certificates, felt suffocating in the silence that stretched between them. Rachel had already reviewed the basic details of the case. Rachel's sudden return, her accusations, and the potential for a court battle. Evelyn could see the seriousness in her lawyer's face as she set down the last of the documents and looked directly at her. "Evelyn," Rachel Adams began, her voice calm, but filled with a quiet urgency. "Rachel's accusations are serious. She's calling this kidnapping. She's claiming you have no right to keep the children, and she's ready to take this to court." Evelyn's heart tightened, the weight of the situation crashing over her. She had hoped, no, prayed that Rachel's return would be nothing more than a fleeting moment of confusion, that it would be something the kids could push through. But the reality of it, the legal ramifications, were much harder to ignore. Can she really do that? Evelyn asked, the words feeling foreign on her tongue, as if she couldn't quite comprehend the nightmare unfolding before her. Rachel Adams leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped together. The law might give her some leeway, especially since she's their biological mother. But you've been their primary guardian for years, Evelyn. You've provided for them. That's something we can work with. Evelyn nodded slowly, but it wasn't enough to calm the fear churning inside her. She had raised those children, loved them as if they were her own. Clear's throat. And now, in one cruel twist, Rachel was threatening to tear them away. I don't want to drag them through this, Evelyn said, her voice breaking. She thought of the toll it would take on Aiden, Maya, and Liam. The fear, the confusion, the strain of reliving the abandonment they'd suffered when Rachel had walked out on them years ago. Especially Aiden. He'd always been the protector, the one who refused to let anyone get close. He'd taken the weight of the world on his shoulders when Rachel left. Rachel Adams reached for a stack of papers. We'll start by gathering everything we can. Adoption papers, school records, medical reports, anything that can show the judge that you've been the stable, responsible parent. You'll need to prove your bond with them. Evelyn's fingers curled around the edge of the desk as she processed. The weight of it all. It's going to be a fight, isn't it? She murmured more to herself than to the lawyer. A big one, Rachel Adams replied, her tone blunt. But you're not alone in this. I'll help you every step of the way. Just be prepared for it to get ugly. Evelyn swallowed hard. The words echoed in her mind as she sat there, the uncertainty eating away at her resolve. Could she really win this? Could she hold on to the children she had raised with everything in her? She thought of Aiden, Maya, and Liam, especially Aiden. He had been so protective ever since Rachel left, almost as though he understood the fragility of their little family. He wouldn't trust easily, not even after all these years. The last thing he needed was to be pulled into a legal battle that would break everything they had built. Evelyn took a shaky breath. What about the kids? She asked, her voice thick. How do I prepare them for this? Rachel Adams paused before speaking, her gaze softening just a little. We'll need to be careful with them. Aiden especially. He's going to be the hardest to reach. But the most important thing is that you stay strong for them, Evelyn. They need to see that you won't back down. Evelyn clenched her fists beneath the table, trying to steady her nerves. The weight of the situation wasn't just in the courtroom. It was in the hearts of the children who had come to rely on her as their rock. She wasn't about to let Rachel's reappearance tear them apart. But as Rachel Adams spoke, Evelyn couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in her gut. This battle wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be quick. And as she left the lawyer's office that afternoon, Evelyn had the cold certainty that the hardest part had only just begun. The storm was on the horizon, and it was coming faster than she could prepare for. The courtroom felt suffocating. Every inch of space filled with tension, the air thick with expectation. Evelyn sat rigidly, hands clasped tightly in her lap, her heart hammering against her chest. Across the room, Rachel sat with her lawyer, a man whose face was cold, calculating as if he had already won. Rachel's lawyer rose first, his voice smooth as he addressed the judge. Your Honor, Evelyn Thompson has no legal claim to these children. She is not their biological mother. She has kept them from their rightful mother for over 13 years, effectively kidnapping them. Evelyn's stomach twisted as the words hit her. Kidnapping. It was as though the room had tilted under the weight of those words. She felt the sharp sting, the burn of injustice. She had given everything for these children. Everything. The lawyer continued, pushing the narrative of Rachel's victimhood. Evelyn Thompson has denied Rachel her rights as a mother. This woman has kept her children from her, refusing to allow them a relationship with their biological mother. The court must intervene and return them to their rightful parent. Evelyn's pulse quickened, but she remained still. She couldn't let herself unravel in front of the judge, in front of Rachel, in front of everyone watching. Then her lawyer, Rachel Adams, stood and faced the court with quiet confidence. Your Honor, Rachel Thompson left her children when they were very young. She abandoned them, and Evelyn Thompson stepped in as their guardian. For 13 years, Evelyn has been the only mother they've known. She has raised them, cared for them, and loved them unconditionally. Rachel Adams paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. Rachel Thompson's abandonment was not an isolated event. She walked away from her children to pursue a life of instability. And now, after years of neglect, she seeks to undo the family Evelyn has fought to build. Evelyn could feel the shift in the room as her lawyer laid out the truth, piece by painful piece. It was a fight, but it was one she had already won in her heart. Rachel may have been their biological mother, but Evelyn had been their mother in every way that mattered. Aiden, Maya, and Liam were called to the stand. Evelyn's heart ached as she watched Aiden step up. His face a mixture of anger and hurt. He'd always been the protector, the one who had struggled with the absence of his mother. His testimony was raw, real. When I was little, I wondered why Mom wasn't there. I didn't understand why she left. But Grandma was always there. She never left me, Aiden said, his voice thick with emotion. Evelyn's eyes stung as she watched him. Aiden, her brave boy, the one who had fought so hard for them, was speaking the truth. But the fight wasn't over yet. Rachel's voice cut through the silence. I'm sober now, Your Honor. I've done the work. I've turned my life around. I'm ready to be their mother again. Her words dripped with rehearsed sincerity. But Evelyn could see through them. She knew Rachel's past too well. The years of addiction, the time spent neglecting her children. No amount of sobriety could erase that history. Rachel Adams didn't miss a beat. Your Honor, Rachel Thompson's past is filled with addiction and irresponsibility. She abandoned her children when they needed her most. She cannot be allowed to dictate their future. Not when Evelyn has provided them with the love and stability they've always needed. The courtroom grew quiet, the weight of those words settling like dust. Rachel's facade of redemption was crumbling piece by piece. As the judge called for a brief recess, Evelyn stood up, feeling the burn in her legs, the tension in her shoulders. The fight was just beginning, but she wasn't about to back down. Not now, not ever. Her family was at stake, and she would do whatever it took to keep them. The weight of the courtroom felt heavier now. Evelyn sat at the edge of her seat, her fingers tightly gripping the armrests as the sound of murmurs and shuffled papers swirled around her. The children had been called to testify, and every second that passed without them on the stand felt like a lifetime. She could feel their fear, their uncertainty, but more than anything she felt their loyalty. Aiden, Maya, and Liam were not just her grandchildren. They were her heart. And each of them had a story, a truth they carried that would determine the outcome of this battle. Maya was first. She stepped up to the witness stand, her face a picture of defiance. Her long brown hair framed her face, but it couldn't hide the hurt in her eyes. She wasn't a child anymore. At 14, she had learned too early what it meant to grow up without the mother who should have been there for her. I don't understand why she's even here, Maya said, her voice steady, but edged with the pain of years of abandonment. Mom left us when we needed her most. I don't remember her ever being there. Grandma is the one who stayed. She's the one who raised us. Evelyn's chest tightened as Maya spoke, her words a sword that sliced through the lie Rachel had tried to weave. It was the truth, undeniable, raw, and painful. Rachel's absence had left a hole in their lives, one that Evelyn had spent years filling. The room was still, and the judge's gaze was fixed on Maya, her face unreadable. But Evelyn could see the flicker of understanding in the judge's eyes. Maya's words had left an impression just as Aiden's had before. Next was Liam. He was smaller than the others, his innocence still hanging on him like a fragile thread. But Evelyn could see the quiet strength in him. He sat up on the stand, his eyes wide, searching for reassurance from his grandmother. But Evelyn knew he would speak the truth. I don't remember Mommy, Liam said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't remember her at all. But Grandma always took care of me. She never left me. The words hit Evelyn like a wave crashing against the shore, and she could see the judge, too, was moved by the simplicity of Liam's truth. Evelyn could hardly bear to look at Rachel as she sat on the other side, her face in a motionless mask. How could she stand there after everything she had done? Rachel's lawyer had tried to spin the story, to paint Rachel as a mother who had simply made mistakes and was now ready to do better. But the children weren't buying it. They weren't swayed by Rachel's carefully crafted words. They had lived the truth. They had felt the pain of abandonment. And now they were standing together with Evelyn, showing the court exactly what their mother had taken from them. Rachel was growing agitated, shifting in her seat as the children's testimonies piled up. But Evelyn could see something else in her, something slipping. The manipulative hold Rachel had tried to maintain was slipping through her fingers. Finally, the judge turned her gaze to Evelyn, her voice sharp. "Mrs. Thompson, you've heard your grandchildren's testimonies. What do you have to say in your defense?" Evelyn stood, her legs heavy, but her heart resolute. She knew what she had to say. This was her moment, the culmination of all her sacrifices, all the years of loving these children as her own. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I am not perfect. No one is," Evelyn began, her voice strong despite the emotions bubbling beneath the surface. "But I have always loved these children. I have always been there for them, even when their mother wasn't. I'm the one who kissed their scraped knees. I'm the one who held them when they cried. I'm the one who stayed." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the courtroom, her eyes locking with the judge's. "I am their mother. I always have been." Evelyn's chest tightened as she finished, knowing that what she had said was true. The fight was far from over, but as she looked back at Aiden, Maya and Liam, who now sat together, their faces full of quiet determination, she knew that they were in this together. They were a family, and nothing could tear that apart. The judge sat still for a long moment, her fingers drumming on the side of the chair. Evelyn held her breath, the tension thick, as the room waited for the decision that could change everything. But before the judge spoke, Evelyn felt the crushing weight of the realization settle deep in her bones. Rachel would stop at nothing to tear them apart. The courtroom grew heavy with anticipation as Rachel's lawyer began flipping through a set of papers with a calculated ease. Evelyn's pulse quickened, knowing that something was about to shift, something important. Rachel Adams, her lawyer, stood in motion toward the judge with a firm hand. "Your Honor, we have new evidence," Rachel Adams said, her voice steady. But Evelyn could sense the edge of something in it, a quiet triumph. She handed a file to the judge, who opened it without a word. Evelyn's stomach twisted as the truth began to unfold. The judge looked up, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the documents. "What are these?" "They are medical records and therapy notes from Rachel Thompson's treatment for substance abuse," Rachel Adams explained. "They document the years of neglect and instability during which Rachel was absent from her children's lives." Evelyn's breath caught. She had known that Rachel's addiction had played a role in her leaving, but seeing it laid out so clearly in black and white felt like a punch to the gut. Rachel's carefully constructed story of a mother seeking redemption had always been a mask, and now it was cracking under the weight of her own past. Evelyn stood, her hands shaking, her heart pounding in her chest. She met Rachel's gaze across the room, and for the first time in this entire ordeal, she felt a surge of something raw, something deeper than anger. "Is this why you left?" Evelyn's voice was calm, though it trembled at the edges. "Because you were too lost in your own addiction to see your children. You left them to fend for themselves while you fed your own demons." Rachel stiffened, her face flushing with a mixture of guilt and frustration. She opened her mouth to respond, but Evelyn wasn't finished. "You can't manipulate the truth anymore, Rachel," Evelyn continued, her voice gaining strength. "You abandoned them. You didn't care enough to stay. And now you're trying to pretend you're ready to step in and play the hero." Rachel's lawyer stood abruptly, attempting to object. "Objection, Your Honor. This is emotional manipulation." The judge raised a hand to silence him. "I'll allow it. Continue, Mrs. Thompson. Evelyn stood tall, her chest heavy with the weight of what she was about to say. I have been their mother for 13 years. I have been the one who kissed their scraped knees, who dried their tears when they asked why you weren't there. I am their mother. Rachel's face twisted in frustration, her mask slipping further. She opened her mouth, but her words were no longer coherent. She was unraveling, and Evelyn could see the cracks widening. Aiden and Maya, who had been called back to the stand, now spoke with quiet but unwavering conviction. Aiden, his voice strong but tinged with hurt, said, "We don't want her back. She wasn't there for us. Grandma was. She's the one who held us when we needed it." Maya added, her voice firm, "She didn't choose us. Grandma did." Evelyn's heart swelled with pride, but it was also laced with the sharp sting of betrayal. Rachel's actions had cost her so much, and now there was no pretending she could undo the damage. Rachel's lawyer tried to salvage the situation, but it was too late. The truth had come crashing through Rachel's defenses, and Evelyn could see it in the judge's eyes, the realization that the children had already made their choice. The judge's eyes moved between Rachel and Evelyn. "I've heard enough," she said, her voice commanding the room's attention. "I'll deliberate and give my ruling soon." The weight of the words hung in the air. Evelyn had fought for this moment, and it was almost within her grasp, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Rachel wouldn't stop. Not now, not ever. As the court adjourned, Evelyn glanced back at her grandchildren, their faces filled with resolve. The fight was almost over. But something told her that Rachel would stop at nothing to tear them apart. And Evelyn couldn't let that happen. Not now. Not ever. The courtroom was colder than usual that day. The silence felt heavier than the weight of the arguments. The verdict that hung in the air like a storm cloud. Evelyn sat at the table, her hands clasped tightly, every inch of her body tense with anticipation. She could feel the eyes of the courtroom on her, the judge's unwavering gaze, the scrutinizing stares of Rachel and her lawyer. This was it, the final day. Rachel's lawyer rose first, his voice cool and rehearsed, just as it had been throughout the trial. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Rachel Thompson is the biological mother of these children. She has every right to their custody, and her efforts to reconnect with them should be supported by this court. Her past struggles with addiction do not define who she is today." Evelyn sat straighter, trying to steady the anxiety building in her chest. She knew Rachel's words would never carry the weight they needed. Rachel's past had been laid bare. Her years of neglect, her absence, the wounds she had left behind. Well, they had been through a storm, but they were together. She wasn't about to let anything tear them apart again. The gavel's echo lingered in her ears, a reminder that the battle had been fought and won. But even in that victory, Evelyn knew the road ahead would still be challenging. The pieces of their family might never fit perfectly again, but they would be whole, and that was all that mattered. The verdict was final, but Rachel wasn't going to let it go so easily. In the days following the trial, Evelyn noticed the first of many posts, angry, bitter, and filled with accusations on Rachel's social media pages. It wasn't long before the floodgates opened. Rachel's posts were full of venom. She painted herself as the victim, claiming that Evelyn had stolen her children from her and accusing her of being a bad mother. "I've lost everything. These children are mine and I've been robbed of them." The more she posted, the more furious her followers became, blindly rallying behind her. Evelyn could feel the weight of it. The accusations were harsh, personal, but she wouldn't be intimidated. She wasn't just fighting for her grandchildren in the courtroom anymore. She was fighting for her reputation, for the truth. After sitting in silence for a moment, Evelyn knew she couldn't just sit by. She had to respond for herself, for her family. The next morning, Evelyn sat down at her computer. Her fingers hovered over the keys. The world was watching now, and every word she typed would matter. She began slowly, her voice measured but firm. "I'm Evelyn Thompson. I'm not the woman Rachel has made me out to be." She paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "I didn't take her children from her. I raised them. I loved them when she couldn't. I gave them stability when she gave them nothing. Evelyn wrote about the years she spent raising Aiden, Maya, and Liam, comforting them when they cried for their mother, being there for them when Rachel wasn't. She told the world the truth, not for the praise, but for the children who had chosen her. When she posted it, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The backlash would come, she knew, but she had told her side of the story. It felt good to finally speak the truth. And it didn't take long for the public to react. Aiden and Maya both shared posts of their own, standing firmly behind Evelyn. "Grandma is my mom. She's the one who's always been there." Maya's words echoed through the comment section. Aiden added, "We've always known who really loved us." The support was overwhelming. Strangers flooded her social media with messages of encouragement, and her story spread. People saw her for who she really was, a grandmother who had stepped in and given her all, not someone who'd taken anything. But Rachel's posts grew more frantic. Her narrative was starting to fall apart. Her followers, once loyal, started questioning her. Some deleted their comments. Others quietly unfollowed her. Rachel's efforts to turn the tide only pushed her further away from the people she had once called allies. Her credibility crumbled. Evelyn, though exhausted, stood firm. She knew Rachel's outbursts and accusations were born from desperation. The world was starting to see through the lies. And it wasn't just strangers. Even local community leaders and friends who had been on Rachel's side began to quietly back away. Their support fading as Rachel's manipulation was revealed for what it truly was. As Rachel's public image continued to deteriorate, Evelyn felt a deep sense of peace. It wasn't the victory she had fought for in the courtroom, but it was just as important. Aiden, Maya, and Liam rallied around her. And for a moment, Evelyn allowed herself to smile through the exhaustion. They were together, and that's all that mattered. But even as Rachel's social media persona fell apart, Evelyn couldn't help but wonder, would Rachel ever truly let go? Would this be the end of the battle? Or was it just another chapter in a story that would never be fully closed? With the trial behind her, Evelyn finally felt the tension that had weighed on her shoulders for so long begin to lift. The chaos of Rachel's accusations was over. And while the scars from the battle remained, Evelyn felt a quiet peace settle in. It was time to focus on what truly mattered, the family she had built and the legacy she wanted to leave behind. Evelyn returned to the work that had always brought her purpose, her charity work. She'd spent so many years helping others, and now with the children grown and stable, she could devote even more time to causes she believed in. She began making regular donations to foundations that supported children's education, ensuring that the next generation had the opportunities they deserved. It was an investment in the future, not just for her grandchildren, but for children like them who deserved a chance to thrive. Aiden, Maya, and Liam, now older and more independent, had grown to understand the value of giving back. They joined her in these efforts, volunteering at local shelters and working on initiatives to provide school supplies to children in need. Evelyn could see how they were beginning to grow into the kind of people she had always hoped they would become, compassionate, driven, and generous. Evelyn's heart swelled with pride as she watched them, knowing that her sacrifices had helped them become who they were today. She'd raised them not just with love, but with purpose. They were her legacy, her true gift to the world. One afternoon, as Evelyn sat at her desk, a letter arrived. It was from a donor who had supported the Children's Education Initiative for several years. The letter was simple but heartfelt. "Your unwavering commitment to these children and their futures has not gone unnoticed. You've changed lives, Evelyn." The words brought tears to her eyes. It was a reminder that her efforts, no matter how small they had seemed at the time, had made a real difference. But even as Evelyn embraced the peace that came with her work, Rachel's attempts to disrupt their lives didn't end. A few weeks after the trial, Evelyn received a call from her lawyer. Rachel was demanding a larger share of the inheritance left by Evelyn's late husband. The audacity of it left Evelyn speechless. But this time, Evelyn wasn't going to let Rachel's manipulations affect her. She quickly put an end to the request, ensuring that Rachel would receive nothing more than what she was entitled to, nothing that would allow her to encroach on the life Evelyn had worked so hard to build. With Rachel's attempts to control her life falling flat, Evelyn felt a newfound sense of freedom. She could focus entirely on her family and the work that brought her joy, knowing she no longer had to engage with Rachel's toxic behavior. As Aiden, Maya, and Liam continued to grow and excel in their own lives, Evelyn couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude. The family she had created together, despite all the challenges, was thriving. They were strong, independent, and ready to take on whatever the world threw at them. Evelyn smiled, looking at the children she had raised with so much love. She had built a life worth living, a family strong enough to weather any storm. Rachel's attempts to break them had failed, and Evelyn knew that the love they shared would be their true legacy. The letter from Rachel sat on the kitchen table, its words still sharp in Evelyn's mind. Rachel's plea for reconciliation, filled with remorse and desperation, was the last straw. It was the same pattern, the same empty promises. Rachel had abandoned her children, caused irreparable damage, and now after everything, she wanted to pretend that she could just step back into their lives. But Evelyn knew better now. She had drawn the line. Evelyn read the letter once more, the guilt she had carried for so long flickering inside her. Could I really cut her off? But then she looked at Aiden, Maya, and Liam, her real children, the ones who had grown up with love, security, and trust. Her decision was clear. With a deep breath, she typed the message. Short, firm, and final. Rachel, I will not engage with you anymore. This is the last time I'll respond. My priority is my family, and I cannot allow you to disrupt our peace. She pressed send. The weight in her chest lightened. It's over, she whispered to herself, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. She had made the right choice. Aiden, who had been quietly watching her, spoke up. Grandma, we're all behind you. You don't need her. His words were steady, and his eyes held a depth of understanding beyond his years. Maya nodded, adding, We're stronger than ever. Liam, ever the silent one, simply wrapped his arms around Evelyn, his small frame pressing against hers, as if to say everything in one wordless gesture. Evelyn squeezed him back, feeling the warmth of her grandchildren's love seep into her bones. They were her true family. Rachel didn't stop trying, though. Her online posts became more frantic, more desperate as she continued to paint herself as the victim, trying to manipulate the public into believing her story. But her attempts only backfired. People, once sympathetic to her, began to question her actions. Her credibility, already fragile, shattered further. Evelyn didn't look at Rachel's posts anymore. She had moved on. The emotional toll of the trial, the manipulation, and the constant battles weighed heavy. But Evelyn took steps to heal. She began seeing a therapist to work through the deep scars Rachel's behavior had left. For the first time, she focused on herself, reclaiming the peace that had been stolen. And then, Evelyn took a well-deserved break. She planned a vacation with Aiden, Maya, and Liam. No more fighting, no more drama. Just the four of them together, finding joy in simple moments. They spent their days hiking, talking, and reflecting on their journey. Evelyn sat on the porch one evening, watching the sunset with her grandchildren beside her. They were free. Free from Rachel's chaos. Free to live without the shadow of the past hanging over them. It was over. The hardest part of their journey was behind them. And Evelyn knew that whatever came next, they were stronger together. She had done it. She had built a family. Months had passed since Evelyn severed ties with Rachel. And with each passing day, she felt the weight of her past lifting. Rachel's influence was fading, and Evelyn's life was slowly but surely coming into focus. It was a new chapter, one she could finally control. Maya had always been supportive of her, urging Evelyn to take up something she had long put aside, the dream of opening her own business. Together they had a vision, a small, charming store that would reflect their love for craftsmanship and creativity. With Maya's keen eye for design and Evelyn's organizational skills, Evelyn's Corner was born. The shop was a celebration of art, local crafts, and community, a perfect blend of their passions. It was a place where the weight of the past could not follow. Aiden helped with the marketing, bringing in a wave of young customers eager to discover local talent. Liam worked alongside them, helping set up displays and learning about business operations. Felt like everything was falling into place. Evelyn smiled as she watched her grandchildren, now young adults finding their own paths. They were thriving, free from the emotional turmoil Rachel had once brought into their lives. But Evelyn didn't stop there. She'd always been deeply involved in charity work. And now, with her newfound peace, she turned her attention to a cause close to her heart. In Tom's memory, she began working on a foundation that would support children in foster care, providing scholarships, mentorship, and resources for those who needed it most. It was a way to give back, to ensure that no child would feel abandoned as hers had. Then came the unexpected, a letter from Rachel Hall, a donor from Rachel's previous charity work. Evelyn had heard little about Rachel Hall in years, but the letter she received was a surprise. A substantial donation to her new foundation. It was ironic. Evelyn thought that this donation came from Rachel Hall, someone once involved in Rachel's manipulative charity work. But Evelyn saw it for what it was, a chance to move forward, a gesture of goodwill. She accepted the donation, knowing that it wasn't Rachel's story anymore. This was about her. It was her future, her legacy. With the foundation taking shape and the business growing, Evelyn's family had found their footing. Aiden, Maya, and Liam had the space to flourish, free from the toxic chaos that had consumed them for so long. Their bond, once strained, was now unbreakable. Rachel, still estranged from everyone, continued her attempts to regain control through legal means. But Evelyn wasn't concerned. Her efforts were futile. Rachel's power had dissolved, and Evelyn knew she was finally free. As she stood in her bustling shop, surrounded by her grandchildren, Evelyn realized the past was no longer a shadow. She had built something real, something lasting. The future was hers to embrace, and no one, not even Rachel, could take that from her. Her family, her legacy. This was the life she had chosen. Evelyn had found the peace she had longed for. The chaotic storm Rachel had brought into her life had finally settled. And with it, a quiet calm had taken root in her home. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt the weight of the world lift off her shoulders. The constant turmoil had given way to something she hadn't realized she needed so desperately: rest. She spent more time with Aiden, Maya, and Liam, who were now flourishing in their own ways. Aiden, focused and determined, was working through his college applications. His brow furrowed in concentration. Evelyn sat beside him, offering quiet support, reminding him of how far he had come. He was ready to step into the next chapter of his life, and Evelyn could feel the pride welling up inside her. It was a small moment, but it meant everything. Maya, on the other hand, had found herself through art. She'd spent hours painting, her hands covered in vibrant colors, and Evelyn watched as her granddaughter's confidence grew. She had always known Maya had something special. And now, seeing her passion shine, Evelyn couldn't help but encourage her to chase those dreams. Maya's future was wide open, and Evelyn was there to help her walk through that door. Liam, the youngest, had always been the quiet one, but now he was using his voice. He had become deeply involved in community service, helping out at shelters and connecting with people who needed a compassionate ear. It warmed Evelyn's heart to see him grow into someone so selfless, so kind. She knew he would go on to do great things. Evelyn's foundation, created in Tom's memory, was also beginning to flourish. The children's education programs had already started helping thousands of kids across the state. Evelyn watched with deep satisfaction as the impact of her work spread. Her late husband's legacy was now one of hope and opportunity, a gift to those who needed it most. One evening, Evelyn found herself participating in a local community project. It was a program designed to help people heal, bringing together those who had experienced hardship. The simple act of sitting in a circle, listening to others, was cathartic for Evelyn. She realized how much she had healed in her own journey, and now helping others find their own peace. She felt more connected than ever to the world around her. Her bond with Aiden, Maya, and Liam had deepened. They no longer just saw her as their grandmother. She was their mother in every sense. The foundation she had built with them was stronger than anything Rachel could ever tear down. Rachel's attempts to reach out had grown fewer, and Evelyn had stopped paying attention. The messages came less and less, and eventually Evelyn didn't need to respond. She had moved on, and so had her children. Her life was hers now, peaceful, free from the shadows of the past. As Evelyn sat back watching her grandchildren laugh, her heart was full. She had done it. She had created the life she deserved, and no one could take that from her. The evening air felt cool as Evelyn stepped into the grand ballroom, the soft hum of voices and clinking glasses filling the room. The Foundation Gala, a night celebrating the work she had poured her heart into for so many years, was finally here. It wasn't just a night to acknowledge her contributions. It was a celebration of everything she had fought for, the children whose futures had been shaped by her foundation, the families she had helped, and the life she had built after the storm of Rachel's chaos. As Evelyn entered the hall, a gentle buzz of admiration and recognition followed her. People whispered her name, and she could hear the praise in their voices. It had been a long time since she had been seen in such a light, and it felt good. She had earned it. Her grandchildren stood by her side, Aiden, Maya, and Liam, each one blossoming into their own person, their faces filled with pride. Aiden, now a young man about to leave for college, stood tall with quiet confidence. Maya's artistic spirit radiated, her eyes bright with ambition. Liam, ever the compassionate soul, stood next to them, a rock of support. Seeing them beside her, Evelyn couldn't help but reflect on the journey they had all taken together. They were no longer the broken children who had suffered through Rachel's absence. They were resilient, strong, and independent. The night went on with speeches and awards, but Evelyn's mind occasionally wandered back to the quiet moments of her life. The sacrifices, the choices, the pain, and how each had led to this moment. Every decision she had made in the past had shaped this peaceful life she now led. She had chosen her family, her values, and her future, and it had been worth every hardship. Then, just as Evelyn was beginning to lose herself in the warmth of the evening, a letter arrived, hand-delivered by her attorney. She opened it carefully, her heart beating faster as she read the contents. It was official. Rachel had given up her legal fight. She would no longer pursue custody, nor would she attempt to regain visitation rights. The words on the page hit Evelyn like a weight lifted from her chest. The final exhale after 13 years of battle. Evelyn's eyes welled up with tears. Tears of relief, of release. She had feared this moment might never come. But here it was. She felt the weight of the past 13 years of stress and emotional conflict finally lift off her shoulders. It was done. Rachel's hold was broken and Evelyn was free. She stood still for a moment, allowing herself to savor the quiet joy that spread through her like warmth. It wasn't about the victory. It was about the peace. Peace for her family. Turning to Aiden, Maya, and Liam standing by her side with beaming smiles, Evelyn felt something she hadn't in a long time. A sense of completeness. They had been through so much together, but now they were stronger than ever. She had given them the love and stability they had longed for, and they had given her back a life filled with purpose. The evening continued, but Evelyn no longer felt the weight of the past. As she glanced around the room, she realized she had accomplished everything she had set out to do. She had rebuilt her family, built a legacy of love and charity, and now she had the freedom to live without looking over her shoulder. When the applause began, Evelyn stood tall, her heart full. She knew in that moment that she had done more than save her family. She had saved herself.